Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back, and today we're going to do One Piece Chapter 1075 review. Let's get into it. The title of this chapter, Labo Stratum Death Game. Starting off with the cover page, we see Vegapunk granted an audience for his scientific genius, and it's hilarious to see Vegapunk dressed up like he's going in for an interview, and most likely he'll be pitching, obviously, his scientific tech, but the Gorosei, I feel like, will respond with, yo, can you make us weapons or not? And how strong can these weapons be? The Gorosei is all about controlling the world. They're not about like, yo, let's make the world a better place, you know what I'm saying? Now getting to the chapter, we see the aftermath of the explosion that hit Pythagoras, and Shaka Vegapunk begins to try to reach out to him, but then he sees this shadowy figure on the camera, and then the camera just ends up going out. And this is clearly Oda trying to mess with us here, as the shadow clearly looks like Saturn. And as that shadow starts taking out some of the cameras, Luffy notices that there's a blackout on their comms. So with the cameras going out and the communications going out, and now the groups are separated throughout the lab, I feel like each of these groups is going to get picked off one by one. And the first group we see is Nami, Brook, and Edison, and Nami actually came across a bunch of diamonds. And it's just hilarious how Nami interacts with anything that's of value, and she just literally stuffed her entire bag with all those diamonds, and she was just ready to run off with them. And Edison gives us a little bit of insight here to those diamonds. He states that these are synthetically made and are for industrial purposes only. And so in the real world, what are diamonds used for industrially? They are used in diamond mirror lasers. And so we have been able to produce these high-powered lasers since the 1970s in the real world. And diamonds are actually ideal for lasers due to their thermal conductivity, their strength, and their optical properties. Thus, this clarifies how the Pacifistas and the Seraphim are able to use lasers. Vegapunk did not replicate Kizaru's ability, he actually ended up creating these diamond mirror lasers. I just love it when Oda uses real science in this story, it's just amazing. Now with our next group of Robin, Atlas, and Chopper, they're actually walking through where Vegapunk is creating these organoids. And all these organoids are synthetic organs that are made in kind of these vats of liquid, kind of like these Dragon Ball Z tanks where you put anything like an organ or a cell inside of there and they're able to grow. So this part of the lab is most likely where Vegapunk was creating the parts for the Pacifistas as well as for the Seraphim. And Robin even points out that these organoids would be indispensable for doctors of the future. And obviously this would help anyone with failed organs such as heart failure, liver failure, kidney failure, etc. And speaking of failures, that's what's happening to the cameras as they go out one after another. And Shaka even states there's someone else in the lab. And thus starts our mystery adventure in One Piece. Now we have to find out which Vegapunk has betrayed the Straw Hats, or potentially if Saturn and Kizaru have arrived on the island and have already started their operation. So this other person that is in the lab is definitely a mystery, as we have accounted for all of the Vegapunks and obviously all of the Straw Hats, who are definitely not involved in this in any way. However, we do not have account for all of the Seraphim, as the Jinbei Seraphim is not in this chapter. But luckily our boy Jinbei is actually in this chapter, and he is actually searching for the Stella body with Stussy and Sanji. They seem to be walking through the weapons development area part of the lab, and it's funny how Jinbei just kind of points out the obvious, where you wouldn't want shockwaves going through this part of the lab, right? Otherwise, if you start doing that, then this whole lab's gonna really blow up, you know what I'm saying? But I think it's also safe to say that this group is actually the safest out of anyone, because the world government, if they are responsible for this attack, they wouldn't want to obviously blow up their own weapons. They want to take these weapons at the end of the day and just take out Vegapunk. And we actually learn about an interesting weapon that Vegapunk has created called the bubble gun, and Lilith actually explains to us how it works, and apparently it can produce the strongest bubbles that can bounce back any attack. So this must be a similar technology to what the Pacifista Mark III use with their bubble shield, and I feel like the bubbles with both this bubble gun and the Pacifista are modeled off of the bubbles that we saw in Sabaody. So Lilith's group here, I think, is the weakest group out of the groups that have separated. So they have Lilith, Frankie, Usopp, and York. They then pull up onto the aftermath of Pythagoras' explosion, and they end up seeing Pythagoras' body without his head, and all of a sudden Pythagoras' head just pops out of the smoke, and he's just like, oh my god, we might have made a grave miscalculation. And ignoring all of this, York just goes up to a shadowy figure, which we learn is S Snake, and S Snake just boom turns her into stone and kicks her away and tries to kill the rest of them. And just a shot in the dark here, imagine if York is actually the one who's been orchestrating this all, as she is the Vegapunk of Desire. So my idea stemmed from the fact that S Snake turned York into stone and kicked her away rather than just basically attacking her and blowing her up. This basically puts York out of play and doesn't make her that guilty, whereas because she could be orchestrating all of this. And the fact that she is the Vegapunk of desire would mean that maybe she wants to be the Stella body. Maybe she wants to be the Stella body that is her desire. And after this initial Seraphim attack, we see more of the Seraphim pop up as Esper and S-Hawk pull up on Zoro. And Shaka tries to stop the Seraphim before they attack, and boom, they attack, and their attack literally looks like the planet Saturn with the ring going around it. I mean, Oda is just a master at messing with us, isn't he? And Shaka continues on here and states if they're not listening to Shaka's commands, that means another Vegapunk gave this initial command to them. And obviously another option here is if Saturn has already pulled up, then obviously the Gorosei's command outranks Vegapunk's command. And Shaka finishes off here, he states, somebody is trying to kill us all. And that gets Lucci and Kaku thinking about what their role is and why they're handcuffed to the ground right now. And they're like, yo, Luffy and Zoro, we can help out here. And Luffy and Zoro were not having it at all, you know what I'm saying? This team up is absolutely wild though. The last time we saw a villain and Luffy team up with this much animosity between them was with Crocodile, and that was in Impel Down, where Luffy just needed to escape and he would take any help he can get to get out of there. Whereas in this scenario with Luffy and Zoro, our two strongest fighters versus S-Bear and S-Hawk, I'm not that worried honestly. The only way I would be worried, and if we wanted to really up the stakes here, is imagine giving the Mihawk Seraphim a Devil Fruit ability. And imagine if that Devil Fruit ability is the Up Fruit, Trafalgar's Devil Fruit. Imagine Mihawk's swordsmanship combined with Trafalgar's ridiculously overpowered ability. That wouldn't even be fair, and I think that would be the only reason Lucci and Kaku would join Luffy and Zoro in this battle. And another clear way to up the stakes would be if Saturn and Kizaru just pulled up right now and all 8 of them just got to fighting. That would be an absolutely epic battle. But yeah, that's all I got. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Let me know which Vegapunk you think is betraying the Straw Hats, and I'm out. Peace.